Welcome to News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery.
Oh my goodness, we've got a great program for you today. You're going to meet Dr. Paul Brownbill, who is a research scientist from Manchester, England. And he is here working with the Texas Tech University Health Science Center in their research and some of the most astounding work that they're doing in a partnership with funding, as I understand, from both countries. He'll straighten us out if that's not correct. And so over the next 2 Sundays, you're going to hear from him, and also with Dr. Natalia, that you've met before, who will be his coordinating partner here. And so we're going to talk with Dr. Brownbill not only about what they're doing in the research in fetal and the pregnancy of health of a mother and child, but also what is happening in the world of medicine as they're trying to work through this whole picture of taking care of a mother and a baby. Dr. Brownbill, it is so wonderful to have you here, and feel free to correct me in anything that I said wrong. But before we get started, I want you to talk a little bit about yourself and how in the world you got here from Manchester, England to Odessa, Texas.
Well, I'd first of all like to say, Johnny, that this is a real pleasure to be in Texas. You know, there's some wonderful people here, a great community, and you know, it's really made the long 18-hour and 3 flights really worthwhile. Where did I start off in life? I started
Right. About there. Sorry, I don't know how that happened. Right. Okay. Sorry about that.
Mic
Well,
check.
at least it won't be up.
Now, do a mic check.
Can you put it a little bit higher?
Higher up. Okay. My name is Paul Brownbill. P-A-U. Okay.
Welcome to News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery.
I'm so glad to have you join us today because you're in for a real treat. You're going to meet Dr. Paul Brownbill, who is a research scientist from Manchester, England, and he's come all the way to Odessa, Texas, which is a long, long plane ride, to work with the research scientists here who are working in some really interesting research work, which is part of an international study primarily in the fetal and for the welfare of the mother and child during pregnancy. And so you're going to hear a lot of really interesting things. Dr. Brownbill, it is such an honor to have you in our part of the world. And before we start, you've got such an impressive list of credentials, and you're going to be doing such interesting work here. And we also want to know what you've been doing all this time. But before we start anything, I want us to go back to your beginning. How did you grow up and want to become a research scientist?
Okay. Well, first of all, Johnny, it's been a real pleasure to come here and talk to your community in Texas. The community is incredible. The people are really friendly and open, and it's been made my trip really worthwhile coming over all this way. My beginnings was in a working class family in a chemical town called Widnes in Lancashire. It's got a very historic background to this town because it produced the first soap in the world, Hudson's soap and Gossage's soap, and it was all based around the kind of raw materials that were available with salt and other things in the nearby vicinity. So the thing to do is to escape from a smelly old historic industrial town and try to do a little bit better for yourself. And I was encouraged to do so. I had some great tuition at school, especially one biologist teacher who really opened my mind to the world of biology generally.
And all the possibilities that were out there for you.
Absolutely. So the world's your oyster when you're given such a good grounding education. And this town is close to the city of Liverpool, where the Beatles were from. I think that's how people would mainly relate to these unknown places around England, is perhaps named something that everybody knows.
And so you were named after Paul of the Beatles?
Yes, I have an older brother and sister who thought it would be a good idea to call me Paul after Paul McCartney. I think even though I did like the Beatles, I think they were a really good sort of music scene and very progressive at the time. I could probably think of somebody slightly better than that to be named after, but nonetheless, yeah. So
Alfred Schweitzer or somebody like that.
That's correct, yeah. So then, after doing reasonably well in my education, I decided to head off to a city at the age of 18, which is Manchester, which is maybe about 25 miles away. Now that seems a lot to us, but 25 miles to you in Texas is just a few doorsteps away, really.
The other side of town.
That's correct. So off I went to this city. Now Manchester has a historic beginning because it was the first industrial city in the world, and its background was involved in cotton weaving, and 80% of the cotton that was produced from the southern states of the USA was exported to Manchester because they'd just begun to industrialize these massive weaving systems using steam technology and water technology, and they created thousands of mills in the northwest of England where hundreds of thousands of people worked, including my grandmother at a later stage in its development. So it became a very thriving city, but then of course the world changes, globalization changes, labour becomes cheaper elsewhere, and then with time the city goes into some level of demise. So I came to Manchester looking at the relics of an old city in 1984, but by the mid-1990s it had a resurgence in development through...
And a phoenix sprang out of the old ruins.
Absolutely. And in a kind of way, I've been talking to people in Odessa, including Professor Ventolini, who spoke to me yesterday about the growth and expectations of this area and the new beginnings, perhaps keeping the oil industry, but also specialising in other themes, including healthcare. So you see the history when you move from place to place, and you see some similarities and changes. But Manchester's a great city now. It's the second most economically important city in the UK after London. So it's not the biggest, it's the third biggest. Birmingham slightly bigger, maybe Sheffield, but its economy is based largely on education, still some engineering as well there, but a lot of high technology industries that are also building up around the University of Manchester as well. So it's a real exciting time for us as scientists to work in Manchester. The University of Manchester, where I'm from, is the 5th most successful research university in the UK. So it's up there with Oxford, Cambridge and the London universities that everybody knows. And so it's great to be able to network and keep that momentum going for Manchester University.
But the other thing that is amazing to me is how global everything you're doing.
Absolutely. I think, you know, a million minds are better than just a few. So there is competition in industry and the need to have intellectual property preserved. But behind all of this, the ethos of academia is collegiality and cooperation. And with that we find new ideas, we bounce ideas off each other, as we've been doing this week in Odessa at the university. And with this comes something greater, so that the product of this is greater than the sum of the parts. And I think this is something that we always should bear in mind when we think about it.
And one of the things, as I understand it, is you lecture to them about what research you've been doing, and then you're also absorbing things from them that are teaching you new research tricks.
Absolutely. You can only learn so much from textbooks. The devil is in the detail, as they say.
That's right.
And with this, talking to people about the very fine intricacies of new technologies, we then start to stir our imagination and see how this could be used to address other problems that we may have thought of but other people haven't. And this is a really important part of research and development, is kind of meeting together as much as possible and trying to exchange ideas and train people in different parts of the world with new technologies and keep the momentum moving for the sake of health of the nations and the globe generally.
And the thing that also is that it's spreading out. It's not just the body that you're looking at, but it's the medications, the thing, and how outside forces affect it. And so you're looking at a larger picture than just the research on the fetus, for example.
Sure. There are different kind of facets of our portfolio that we have as researchers as we advance in our careers. We have specialisms in certain areas, and I do have specialisms in looking at fetal growth.
And we're going to have to take a break right now. We'll be back in just a minute, and we'll talk about those specializations. Be right back.
Stay tuned. West Texas View will be right back.